All right, today we're making a tier list. I'm comparing games as coping mechanisms, just random games I could think of, versus actual coping mechanisms that people use frequently in day-to-day life, be it through recommendation of a therapist or otherwise. And yeah, we're just going to talk about how video games and other types of games help people cope and improve their mental health. Let's get right into it and describe how this is going to work. And firstly, disclaimer, why am I qualified to give you this spiel and to talk about mental health? I'm not. I'm a psychology student. I've been studying for 4 years, almost have a degree in it, but I'm not a doctor. I can't diagnose anybody. I can't speak for the way symptoms present themselves or how mental illnesses work. Talk to a professional, right? Now that disclaimer's out of the way, let's party. So here are our categories. Recommended for all, or in other words, these are coping mechanisms or video games for coping that I'd recommend to everybody. Everybody will get benefit from this. Recommended for many, you get it. Not everybody would like it, but most people will. This is great for some purposes. Not necessarily for some people, but for some purposes. So like, for instance, this video game or this therapy style would be really good for someone with autism or someone who blah, 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 right? This is a polarizing one. So there's a coping mechanism that will either be really helpful or harmful. It could go either way depending on the person and the situation. So tread lightly with those. And then these are scams, or video games that will not directly help you with coping in any meaningful way, or will be harmful. Same is true if we're talking about a coping mechanism, if that makes sense. Make a tier list for you shouldn't play this if you don't have good mental health. Oh, like will directly tank your mental health. I kept most of those games away from this tier list, but my own opinion, most horror games go right there, or psychological thriller games. But in the meantime, let's talk about these games. If you guys have any recommendations of games you want me to make a tier list about in the future, comment below. We'll make some more of them later, I'm sure. Cough, cough, Phasmophobia. Yeah, for real. You see Dark Souls in here? You sure do. Alright, let's talk about it. Let's just go in order. And some of these symbols you won't recognize, because they're just what I'm using to represent a category or group of either video games or normal coping mechanisms. So let's get into it. Animal Crossing. I love this game. I'm a big fan of Animal Crossing. However, I think this is good for some purposes. I think Animal Crossing is really good for relaxing, chilling. It can be addictive for some people, so it may not be the best for that. And it can lead to super avoidance of dealing with actual issues, but it can definitely be good and helpful, right? The progression is way too slow for you. Progression? What do you mean?
Like getting outfits and furniture that I feel like I'm constantly fishing and finding seashells and gathering bugs to get more money to pay off my debt.
For some people, Animal Crossing stresses them out because they're not taking care of their real-life responsibilities. And for some people, it's nice because it gives them a break from their real-life responsibilities. I'm going to definitely put this in great for some purposes. Minecraft goes here under Animal Crossing as well. Just these games where you simulate your own life and you just relax. Next up, this is a symbol I'm using for hiking or nature use in general, of going out into the wilderness and going on hikes and going camping. I would say this is under recommended for many. Hey, Ryder, because it's a very fresh air kind of experience. Is good for almost every mental health scenario. There are some people who don't like it, and if you don't like it, you shouldn't do it, right? But I'd say 80% of people will benefit to some extent from outdoor naturey stuff. And if you don't like certain forms of it, like camping, then just do a different kind. Does it make sense? Anyways, art. Art is an interesting one. I would say art is good for some purposes. Art could even be considered polarizing, because for some people it leads their mental issues into a worse place. I know a lot of artists who they're so good at art and they love art, but the more they do art, the less healthy they get about it, if that makes sense. As a person who acts once or twice a month, you would recommend? Yeah, love it. But yeah, I think art definitely goes under polarizing, or maybe even just great for some purposes, because a lot of people it's relaxing and calming and they get to have something cool at the end. For a lot of people it's stress inducing, and for people who like perfection, it's hard for them, which could be a good thing. It could help them cope with that and overcome that. But I think as a coping mechanism to deal with stress and mental illness, it's pretty polarizing, if that makes sense. Up next, first-person shooters. I have a very particular opinion about first-person shooters and mental health. I'm putting them right under great for some purposes. The reason being is because you could technically say certain aspects of it would be good for certain mental health things, right? Like the social aspect could be good for people with depression or anxiety, or the competitive nature could be good for teaching somebody to get more into competitive things or to be more out there and sociable, right? However, with first-person shooter, I think the greatest value that it could grant to someone is reflex training and coordination and spatial awareness. So like kids with autism or people in hospitals who are training their eyes to be better after an accident, if that makes sense. Hey, Aubrey, welcome to chat. For references to what this is, we're making a tier list comparing certain styles of video games and whether or not they'd be healthy coping mechanisms versus actual coping mechanisms people use. No FPS player is mentally stable after 3 or more competitive losses. Notably, I'm not referring to just online play. I mean FPS in general. Any first-person shooter style of game where you're running around and neutralizing threats. I will say, if you're going by like quality of video game or community, it's a scam, right? Most online competitive shooters are just a scam for that reason, as far as mental health goes. But I will say, for helping people to either A, stay grounded, or B, improve their spatial awareness and reaction timing, I think first-person shooters can be very helpful for those situations. But otherwise, they're not very useful, if that makes sense. All right, Dark Souls, let's talk about it, chat. This recommended for all. No, don't. No. Okay, so Dark Souls is special. All the Souls games are made to be frustrating and very challenging, which you would think, oh, scam, super unhelpful for mental health. However, for a lot of people, loss in a environment where losing is acceptable and in fact very common can be really helpful as a teaching tool to help people understand what's important and what's not important, if that makes sense. And so I would put Dark Souls under polarizing. If you have trouble with anger issues or outbursts, so to speak, Dark Souls can either be really good for you because it can teach you to calm those emotions and be patient and work on timing over time, but it could also be very bad and you could get really upset and like throw your controller through your TV and stuff. And people do, like, both reactions occur in the Dark Souls community. When I say Dark Souls, I mean Souls games in general, like games that are very challenging and require a lot of quick speed reaction time and patience to be good at, like Hollow Knight, because it's like the 2D Dark Souls. Good example, Annie. So I would put Dark Souls under polarizing, because for a lot of people it improves their mental health greatly. It really teaches them patience and coordination. And for a lot of people, it's bad. There are a lot of people who should not play super challenging video games. Up next, we're getting into some normal coping mechanisms. Journaling. I recommend journaling for everybody. I don't think there's anybody who doesn't benefit to some extent. As an employer of Souls games, it's good as long as you know when to take a break and when you're getting too mad. Dude, for real. Oh, enjoyer of Dark Souls. Yeah, that makes sense. Dude, for real. I think Dark Souls has taught me the most that I'm better at a subject if I, like, sleep on it. You know what I mean? I'll play against a boss for an hour, and I won't be able to get it, and I'll put the controller down, and I'll wake up, and the next day I'll try it, and I'll get it in the first try. And so I think I think Dark Souls is really good for teaching patience like that. But anyways, journaling. I think journaling is super, super important and very good for everybody. And I think it doesn't have to be what you think it has to be. Whenever you journal, you don't have to write down every thought you had throughout the day, and you don't have to write down every event that happened in the day. You just write some stuff down, and it keeps you cognitively grounded, so to speak. It helps you to recognize what's important, helps you to talk through your emotions, and it helps you to have a safe place to freak out or to be upset or to be happy, if that makes sense. Hey, M4, you'll appear for 10 seconds and disappear. Okay, bye, M4. You don't like journaling much? That's fair. Journaling can be really challenging. It took me years to actually start like a habit with it, but now that I have, I can definitively say it's the most helpful thing I've done for my mental health in a while. So can't recommend it enough. I think journaling is really good. I think there are a few instances where it's not necessarily good or could be unnecessary or theoretically even bad, but I think those are such few and far between cases that I would recommend journaling for everybody. Okay, bye M4, have a good night. All right. You're really bad at spelling words, it's embarrassing. Oh no, you're good. You fear other people would find it, make fun of you for doing it. Well, the cool thing about journaling is you can journal and then lock it away or throw it away or burn it, and the practice of journaling is more important than keeping the journal. I will say keeping the journal can be good for some people and healthy to be able to go look and back and see how much they've improved, but I think journaling and throwing it away if you're afraid of people finding it, or burning it or whatever, or just deleting the page you made it on your phone is totally acceptable, because the practice of journaling is what helps you. But looking back on it can also be helpful, so do both. But if you can't do both, just do it, right? Next up, and this is kind of hard to see because it's black on a black background, but affirmations. These are basically thinking positively to yourself, telling good things to yourself, like that you're loved and that people care about you and that you're good at things. I put this under recommended for all because most therapists would recommend it for all. I think it probably fits under recommended for many better because it'll never be harmful. Affirmations are almost never going to be bad. There's some people it will just be a little bit of a waste of time for because they don't believe it and so they're not getting actual use out of it. And an important thing about all of these mechanisms is if you don't use them, they don't work, right? And so if you start affirmations for a day but you don't do it, it doesn't matter. Affirmations are basically just positive self-talk. Saying things to yourself like how you are a hard worker, or people care about you, or you're good at X, Y, and Z, instead of talking negatively about yourself to yourself. Does that make sense? Some people will even do this in a formal setting by looking in a mirror and saying the same sentence several times. And if that's where you need to start, that's where you need to start. But I think affirmations, everybody should try it. And I think most people will see mileage out of it. So I want to put under recommended for many. All right, theater. Theater is really interesting. I want to say recommended for all because I love theater. It's helped me get really good at talking to people. However, I think theater is pretty polarizing. Maybe. I think if you don't like the actual performative part of theater, you can find parts of it that you can still use to get the coping parts, like watching and enjoying it or being a technician in the background, right? Then you still get the social aspect. But I think a lot of people are afraid of theater, and so it's polarizing for them. But I think if they tried it, they would like it. Does this include improv? Absolutely, yeah. In fact, theater therapy is a big part of... is a type of therapy that's a big deal. Is your Wi-Fi or did Teo just freeze? I think it's your Wi-Fi. Although, if I've frozen, you can't hear me say that. Would RP be considered theater, or are they too different? No, RP would certainly be considered within the sphere of improv at the very least. And if you did it performatively in front of people, or if your RP, like your roleplay was public, it would definitely be theater. If your roleplay was then edited and turned into writing, that would be writing. And if it was private, that would be improv. which is under theater because it's a kind of a big umbrella term. But I would say, yeah, I think roleplay would definitely be considered a part of it. But I think used to do that a lot privately, but it was super helpful. Yeah, absolutely. I think we're about to get into another one here in a second that will be a lot like theater. And I think theater will be great for like 90% of people. I think there's some people that their problems are too great for theater to solve it. And so they'd need to fix their stuff, like their anxiety or their fear of crowds, before they could try it out. But I think most people would benefit from it. Your brain lagged. Yeah, fair. Okay. Animal therapy. This is an interesting one. My brain... So animal therapy, for reference, is getting an animal and being around it, and it will help you feel better, because humans touching most fuzzy, soft animals releases a chemical called oxytocin. This is what people who have ESA animals do, right? No, not a video game. This is just a coping mechanism. My brain says recommend for all. I recommend for many. But the issue, and the reason I'm putting it in polarizing, is because some people have pet allergies. And that's just the way that it is. I dated somebody for a long time who had a pet rabbit. And it was her ESA animal, and it helped her a great deal. It helped with her anxiety, helped a lot of problems. I am allergic to rabbits and almost died all the time. And so, obviously, it would not be a great solution for me. Sure, other animals could be. And some people, yeah, Lainey, like you said, some people just don't like animals. They stress them out, or they just don't enjoy their company. And so, I think, while I want to say recommended for many or for all because I love animals, they're honestly polarizing because some people physically can't be around them, you know? All right. Let's talk about team building as a coping mechanism. This could be team building exercises, team building video games, any sort of team building thing. I'm going to put it under recommended for all. However, no, I'm going to put it recommended for many. I think everybody should do it and should get good at teams and teamwork. I think as a coping mechanism, something to help people feel better, to overcome stress or mental disorders, I think it's a many thing instead of an all thing, because for some people it stresses them out to be in a team, even if they're good at it or in some instances might enjoy it. I think it wouldn't be a stress reliever for everybody, but I think for many people it would be. You hated snakes, but I changed your mind with the small ones. Yeah, small snakes are really cute. Team building is so stressful. You get so frustrated with other people. I think that's good. I think it's good to get stressed with your coping mechanism because it will teach you things. That's why I think Dark Souls is a good coping mechanism for some people. But like I said, it's not for everybody, if that makes sense. D2 raids got you messed up in the team building department, yeah. Alright, this says Genshin Impact, but I really mean gacha games, or any game that has a system of gambling within it as a main mechanic. And it's a scam. Yeah, it's our first scam today. Because there are parts of gacha games that are good, and theoretically, the gacha part could teach you that gambling addictions are bad, but honestly, that's still just a scam, because the whole point of, like, gacha games is to get you to gamble. So, yeah. You could argue for polarizing, because for some people it's an addiction, for some people it's fun. But, I mean, anything can be fun. It's a scam for coping mechanisms anyway. Moving on. Yoimiya and Lantern Knight might have helped with your fear of fireworks, but the gambling part is so bad, yeah. You said your workplace does team building exercises? Oh, cool. That's the thing, is I think a lot of team building exercises for workplace teams can be really important and helpful, even if people don't like it. It's fun for you, you win gacha games. Oh, I have plenty of fun. I just think it's a bad coping mechanism because it teaches you to gamble. Alright, next up, let's talk about Pokemon. If we're talking about Pokemon Go, I would put it under recommend for many, because that's just walking with a video game, right? But as we're just talking about Pokemon, like the video games, because we'll get into the card game in a second, I'm going to put it under great for some purposes. I think it can teach people resource management. I think it can teach people to to, what's the word? Be patient and to learn things, to understand statistics. Tons of important stuff that's really helpful. People can really enjoy the game. But I don't think everybody should just play Pokemon and it can start being helpful, right? Competitive can help with decision making, and non-competitive can be super calming. Yeah, for real. Speaking of Pokemon, you just started an Alpha Sapphire Nuzlocke. I'm on attempt 3. Oh, wow. Jeez. Not really team building exercise, but we run Call of Duty and we have the best call outs and it's so much fun. That does sound like a lot of fun. But anyways, yeah, Pokemon. I think for some people and for some purposes it can be really helpful, because some people find it relaxing and some people find it stressful in a good way. But I definitely don't think it's something that I would tell a lot of people to try out, right? Like, my mom would not enjoy the Pokemon video games, if that makes sense. Don't ask why you're playing Call of Duty at work. Don't worry, I won't. Let's move on. So, this is the Dungeons & Dragons logo, but I'm taking it to mean all tabletop role-playing games. And I'm putting this under everybody. It's got all the perks of theater, and all the perks of most average video games, and all the perks of team building, but here's the important part, is it's extremely customizable. Because in theater, if you walk onto a stage and you like have a panic attack and you can't breathe, you've got to fix that first. But in Dungeons & Dragons, if you're afraid of groups bigger than 2 or 3 people, you just play with less people. If you are afraid of talking in front of other people, you can do it online, and you can do it all over text, right? The thing about tabletop role-playing games is they are basically therapy in a game, or at the very least they could be made as such. Now, an important part of Dungeons & Dragons or other tabletop role-playing games is they can be unhelpful for certain people and they can be actively harmful, but that's because they're dependent entirely on the people that you're playing with, right? And so if you're playing with a bunch of jerkheads that are just like the worst, you'll have a bad time, right? It will not be a fun coping mechanism. But if you iron out those kinks and you solve any issues or minor problems, you will find that tabletop role-playing games lead to communication and they lead to open, important discussions, and they allow for things like escapism and power that a lot of people don't get to feel. And I think that's really important. Arson solves everything. Oh gosh, Fusion's at it again. You really want to play D&D? Super fun. Can't recommend it enough. Not even just from like a therapy perspective. I love Dungeons & Dragons. Though, I think from a therapy perspective, it's really good. And actually, to level with you guys, one of the reasons I'm going into psychology is because I want to start teaching people with mental disorders to play D&D and to do theater, because I think those things will help a lot of people. And I think as soon as we can destigmatize them a little bit more and make them a tool, they can be magical and really helpful. Chess goes unrecommended for many. As a chess player yourself, chess can be stressful at times, but can give you good decision-making skills. Yeah, I was going to put it exactly there. Good call. You have to start a campaign with your friends. Absolutely. The thing about chess is it's so good at teaching you about cognitive working memory type stuff. And there's very little harm in doing it, right? Especially because you can play online. You can play with a bot. You don't have to worry about the stress of interacting with other people. You could play chess at any time, at any place, no matter what. And I think that's really special and helpful as far as a coping mechanism goes, right? It could be anything from a mobile game to sitting down with someone close to you and playing. The only reason I don't recommend it necessarily for all is because there's certain people with disabilities that keep them from being able to play chess. At the very least, play chess in a way that would make them happy. This could either be like they're a paraplegic and they don't enjoy that sort of thing and they can't memorize it well enough to do it mentally, or just they have a cognitive disorder that keeps them from getting the spatial stuff well enough to try it. Though I think those people could theoretically benefit from it. Helps you think for the future to get best results? Absolutely. If you want to make your mind work fast, play Bullet. If you want puzzles, play puzzle chess. If you want fun, play casual. Oh, there's, yeah, the different formats of chess. Yeah, exactly. You're right, it is pretty versatile. You know what? I'm going to say recommend for all, with the caveat of obviously if you can't, don't, right? Next up, eating as a coping mechanism. Eating as a coping mechanism is interesting. Your brain says, "Oh, it's a scam because you should only be eating if you need to," right? However, this can be really good for some purposes. Specifically, people have found that people with eating disorders who have been diagnosed with eating disorders and have trouble eating, like anorexia or bulimia, that those people can turn eating into a coping mechanism or a type of game or into something that they enjoy, and then it can be a really healthy way for them to cope with their disorder. For pretty much everyone else, it's not super safe, because if you get stressed at work and you eat, and you get stressed at home and you eat, and you get stressed at school and you eat, you're going to eat way more than you need to. And there are negative health benefits to eating more than you have to, if that makes sense. So, yeah. For a lot of people, it's bad. Don't do that. However, there are instances where eating as a coping mechanism can be really healthy and helpful to a lot of people. Moving on. Among Us! This game, we don't mean just Among Us. We mean games that require lying and... what are the words I'm looking for? Deception games, yeah, with groups of people specifically. Eating is your coping mechanism. You don't eat much, you just like munch on gum or something. Yeah, a lot of people do that. Eating is definitely a coping mechanism of mine, and I'm working on it. Anyways, Among Us, deception games. These are cool. They can be kind of like team building exercises. The trouble is they can be really upsetting to some people, especially if you're trying to teach someone to be trusting. This is the worst game for that person to play because it'll ruin all of the progress. So I'm going to put this under polarizing because for a lot of people, it's really good. It relaxes them. It's fun. It's funny. It's enjoyable. And for some people, it makes them very upset, which makes sense. And yeah, polarizing. That's where I'll put it. The one Among Us game we had, yeah, that was ridiculous, you guys. Next up, we're going to talk about trading card games. The perfect mix of the strategy of chess and the scam of gambling. I'm going to put trading card games under polarizing. Because on the one hand, you could develop a gambling addiction to something like Magic the Gathering or Pokemon cards, right? On the other hand, it could teach you about the economy, about how stock markets rise and fall. It could teach you decision-making skills, patience, all that important stuff, right? So I'm going to put it under polarizing because for some people it's healthy and helpful, and for a lot of people it's an addiction, and that's bad, right? So that's where we put that. If you guys have any counters for that argument, let me know. Is that Candy Crush down there? You shush. No ruining the fun. Genshin TCG go burr. Alright, The Sims. People might not agree with me on this. No, I think The Sims go exactly where Animal Crossing goes. They're kind of the same thing. The only difference is you have way more control. Where you make art goblins or your OCs, yeah. I think Animal Crossing is just an environment-controlled simulator, and Sims is a player-controlled simulator. And so the biggest difference is that you gain more control. And for a lot of people, that can be a lot less stress-inducing. For some reason, your PC cannot run Sims 4 and you don't know why. What the heck? My roommate's PC can run, like, Zenless Zone Zero and Genshin Impact, but it can't run Magic Arena, like Magic the Gathering Arena, for some reason. Anyway, which is like 12 gigabytes. That's not the point. Okay, Risk or other strategy games. This is an interesting one because it's got all of the strategy of chess and all of the social interaction of D&D, but with competition and stakes. And as such, I'm going to put it under recommended for many because the stakes make it better for some people and worse for others because it's competition. But it still has all the good stuff that the S tier stuff does, right? So games like Risk, games like Civilization, strategy games, right? I think those go under recommended for many because there's some people who just don't like competitive games, and so just don't play them, right? Okay, up next. This is an interesting one. So this is the image for Goat Simulator, but specifically I wanted to talk about what I'm referring to as chaos simulators. These are games like Goat Simulator, Untitled Goose Game, the cat simulator that like knocks over cups and junk, where literally your entire purpose is to just cause ruckus, right? Just make a mess and blow up random nonsense, right? I I want to say it's a scam. I'll be real with you. Actually, no. I will say it's a scam. The reason, the reason being, and hear me out for a second, because I know a lot of you don't agree with me, is because if your goal is to have control over an environment, you can do that in 1,000 other games. You can do that through journaling, through Dungeons and Dragons, through a simulator game, right? If your goal is to do something chaotic and silly and explodey, you can do that through, again, journaling, Dungeons and Dragons, theater, like improv and stuff, a simulator, etc. If you want to be destructive, you could do any of those things. But I think, as we'll discuss later, I think something that encourages you to be destructive and to break stuff and things like that is honestly kind of an unhealthy coping mechanism. I think it leads to wishing you could do that stuff in real life when you're in moments that you can't control, and then losing your temper more frequently. And/or could lead to an addiction to the thing because you think, oh, I can't control my real environment. Let's go break stuff in Go Simulator.
I think that's awful.
This is my opinion. Again, disclaimer, I'm just a psychology student. I don't have a degree. I'm not like some crazy genius. I'm just a rando.
I want there to be a different...
Put that in chat. Put your opinion in chat.
You didn't read it.
Yeah, I don't need to read it. It's in chat. It's immortalized forever on YouTube. Don't be mean to me. Anyways, I love you too. Anyways, I think they're a scam. If you think that they're good and helpful, great. But I think you could get all the good stuff out of it from a different game and none of the bad stuff. Moving on. Catharsis. This is a coping mechanism that for a long time people thought was really, really good. For an explanation as to what catharsis is, let me just set this here for now. This is not the ranking. For an explanation of what catharsis is. Let's say you're really angry. Let's say your boss is going to fire you and you're mad and you're pissed about work. To be cathartic or to do something cathartic, you would go home and maybe buy some cheap plates and break the plates, or go to a destruction room. They have those these days. Or vent to someone for a long time. Catharsis is just getting out your emotions, usually anger, in a way that will not ruin your life, right? So instead of beating up your boss, you go smash some plates. I think catharsis, and a lot of people in psychology agree with me, but this is not like a fact that everyone agrees with. I think catharsis is a huge scam. I think it's really bad. And the reason I think it's really bad, like actively harmful, is because, how do I put it? If you're feeling an emotion, let's say anger, feeling the emotion anger during a different moment more does not make the emotion go away or settle or makes you calm down. It makes it worse. It makes you more angry, right? Does it make sense? And so venting and breaking stuff and going crazy makes it get worse usually rather than better. You light a bonfire, burn all your unnecessary stuff. Yeah, and I don't know if that would be considered catharsis necessarily. That might be more like letting go and practicing mindfulness. But if you like started knocking the bonfire over and like throwing logs through windows, that would be a cathartic experience and probably bad. Let's move forward. Avoidance. Avoidance is interesting. I'm led to believe, like a lot of people are led to believe it's just automatically a scam, and it kind of is. Because avoidance is the practice of, instead of dealing with your problem that you're trying to cope with, you just forget it exists and you ignore it. I think there are some specific instances where avoidance can be helpful and good. But if we're talking about the majority of things, like 99% of the time, it's a scam. Confront your problems, people. There are instances where you can't or you shouldn't, and in those very specific instances, very specific few instances, you should avoid those problems. But the rest of the time, confront them, right? If you're mad at your boss, talk to your boss. If you're mad at like if you're upset at the way like the world is, try to fix the world, right? You're saying many things I do not like. My deepest apologies. The thing is with catharsis and avoidance specifically, those are backed up by some science. My opinion on Goat Simulator or gacha games are not. You just like to watch fire sometimes. Yeah, and I think that could be a form of meditation more so than destruction. But anyways, avoidance, can it be helpful? Can it be useful in occasions? Yes. Is it a scam? 90% of the time, I would say. Moving on. Let's talk about roguelike games. These are games where once you die, all of your progress is lost, or 90% of your progress is lost, and you have to pop back at the very beginning and try the whole game again. I'm going to put roguelike right next to Dark Souls. I'm going to put roguelike above Dark Souls. Because while roguelikes aren't necessarily difficult and challenging and horrible in that way, they have a similar vibe about them of teaching you to overcome and to be patient, right? Cough, cough, arc, yeah. And as such, I think they're more helpful and more effective than Dark Souls for most people. But I still think they can be pretty polarizing in the sense that it gets people pretty upset. Lainey saw gambling and got excited. Yep, next up is gambling. This is all forms of gambling, be it like betting on horses or football teams or playing video games where you're going to make money. The main difference between this and gacha games is it's real stakes and real money as opposed to digital versions of it, which you can spend real money on digital versions, but you get what I mean. S tier if you want to be broke. Yeah, it's a scam. Gambling is not a coping mechanism, it's an addiction. What's the difference between addiction and a coping mechanism? I'm glad you asked. Let me explain. Basically, a coping mechanism is something you do to help you alleviate stress and problems in your life, right? An addiction is something you can't stop doing even when you're not stressed. Or at the very least, you desire to do regardless. Addictions take away your agency and your free will, so to speak, whereas coping mechanisms allow you to do more things and allow you to overcome stress so that you can have more free will, if that makes sense. 99% of gamblers quit before they make it big, and 1% have common sense. Moving on. Skyrim. Skyrim will take to mean any open world vast game with lots of little side quests and lots of other extra stuff to do. Wide open big world games. Skyrim is a classic example, so this is the symbol I used. But you could use this for a game like Fallout or Breath of the Wild or some other open world game. Technically, Genshin qualifies as one. Yeah. Genshin definitely qualifies as an open world game with lots of side quests and exploration and things to do. But it's also a gacha game, and the gacha part of Genshin is negative. Now, the open world game, I would put this under... I could see recommended for many or great for some purposes. I'm going to go under recommended for many. Because... How do I put it? No, I would put it under great for some purposes. I think it doesn't help enough people generically, just flat, to be under that category. But I think it can be really helpful to a lot of people. It can be really calming and relaxing, and it can let people with ADHD just do the ADHD thing and just do 1,000 side quests, right? And it has enough stuff in it that you won't randomly get bored, and for a lot of people that's really important for their coping mechanism. What's SSBU? Anyway, you want to see my opinion on Osu? We're getting there soon. So I think it goes under great for some purposes because a lot of people will like it, but a lot of people, these other things do the trick better. Do the ADHD thing? Yeah, that's that's a scientific term. Doing the ADHD thing. Next up, is Super Smash Brothers. Specifically, this encapsulates fighting games that you have to play with other people. You don't have to play Smash Brothers with other people, but you pretty much do. So I think... So this could be kind of like a party game, but is also a fighting game, and it's a unique thing in that sense. There's a couple other fighting games like this. I would say recommend for many. I think some groups of people wouldn't like it or would have trouble, but I think a lot of groups of people, whenever they didn't like it or had trouble, would be good. It'd be a teaching experience to #get good. I think it's great for a lot of people. It teaches social environment, teaches competitiveness without like getting upset at each other. It hopefully, right? It's kind of similar to Risk in that way, but for people who don't care about strategy but want to care about reflex time and stuff. All right, let's talk about Jackbox games. This will also encapsulate all party games, so like Mario Party 8 or whatever. I think these games go under recommended for... we'll go for recommended for many, not for all. Because they're basically team building games, but they're also gamified and fun and jokes and blah blah blah, right?
Team building?
Yeah, absolutely. Or team competition and coping, right? But in general, I think most people can benefit from interacting with a group of people and having fun with them. And Jackbox and games similar to that, like party games, can facilitate that pretty easily. Do I think it's as good and should go in the same category as something like a tabletop role-playing game like Dungeons & Dragons? No. Do I think it's as good and helpful as something like theater or strategy games or Smash Brothers? Absolutely. I think party games can be really good for a lot of people. Group therapy. We're going to put this under good for some purposes. A lot of people do worse in group therapy than they do in normal, and some people do much better. Whenever I was a kid, I did group therapy for my autism, and it worked wonders. It helped so much. My parents wouldn't stop talking about how much it was helping. And I've done solo therapy as a little kid, and man, as a little kid, was it not great. And so I think for some purposes and for some people, it's really helpful. For others, it's not. That's okay. You do lock in when you have to bodyguard friends, but you stray away from sometimes. Oh, when you... when you get sidetracked and stuff, yeah. Okay, music as a form of coping. I think music is interesting. I would say some purposes. I don't think it's recommended for many because some people, music stresses them out or just doesn't do anything. It's just music. For me, it's just music. I don't care if music's playing. It's just kind of distracting, but like that's it. It depends on the genre, depends on the person, depends on the moment and the situation. Whereas some people feel like they can't live life without constantly listening to music, and that's okay. For them, it's a really helpful coping mechanism. So that's why I think it goes here. Also, I think this is going to make about a perfect, what's it called? Curve, as it should, because I think this is where most things are going to fit. Moving on, puzzles. I think puzzles are recommended for, I'm going to go for everybody, actually, because they've got all of the problem-solving stuff of chess without the social part, and for some people, that's better, right? I think puzzles are really helpful, and this could be puzzle games, actual puzzles on a table. I'm taking it to mean real-life, cognitive, touching, spatial, blah, 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 right? Musics make your walks and hikes go faster. Yeah, and for some people, that's good, and for some people, it's bad. I like my walks and hikes to take longer. Alright, moving on. Baldur's Gate 3. I just put this on here because I play a lot of Baldur's Gate 3. You cannot exist in silence, you will explode. Fair. It's for people like you that I have background music playing. Baldur's Gate 3 is a weird one. And I put this here instead of just letting it be Skyrim or something because it's this whole other beast. I'm going to put it under polarizing. I almost want to put it under scam. How do I put it? It's basically reading a book but you're playing a video game. And for a lot of people, reading a book, super good. Playing a video game, super good. I will say, the big trouble with it is it is pretty explicit at times. It has very mature content, some of which is sexual. It has very mature content, a lot of which is murder. Baldur's Gate 3 is really, really polarizing, I think. I think it's really bad for kids, really good for people who want to do something social by themselves, really good for groups of friends who want to play co-op, right? I think it can be a really healthy coping mechanism. I think it can be an addiction, and I think it can be very bad. Realest thing ever, you're scared of silence. I love silence. It's the best. Okay, exercise. Recommended for everybody. With the exception of do it correctly and don't hurt yourself, right? Obviously, over-exercising or under-exercising or doing it wrong or breaking your ankle, all those are bad. However, if you don't get a little bit of exercising in every day or a couple times a week, you will notice a difference versus the times when you do. Everyone will. And it's like wild, the amount of change exercising will do for you. It's like journaling. I started doing it, didn't think it would help. It's been the best. I don't exercise as much as I should. I should do more. I think everybody should do it a little bit. I think exercise is a big thing. And I think a lot of people who have mental disorders that are really challenging, they get unmotivated to do physical things because they think, oh, this is going to suck. I'm depressed. So therefore, running is going to hurt more and suck more and blah, blah, blah. But what they don't realize is exercise releases endorphins into your body that make you feel better and that push depression away. And so most psychologists and therapists recommend you exercise and you eat well. And if you still have depression, then you work on it and do something else. But if you exercise and eat well and sleep enough, like 50% of mental disorders in the world will just kind of go away. All right, or at the very least become very minimal, if that makes sense. You always felt better after karate class, but I suspect there was also a mental component. Yeah, I'm sure there was, but I think the movement probably did more for you than you thought it did. All right, let's talk about Cooking Mama. Specifically, any game that is just 90% mini games, where you're just doing a bunch of little tiny tasks. And these tasks could be about timing and physical ability, and they could also be about mental ability, right? Classic Cooking Mama nonsense. I'm going to put this under polarizing. I think for some people, having variety of what's going on at any given time is really important and helpful to them, kind of the way Skyrim can be good for ADHD people because it lets them just go free form and do whatever they want. I think the structure of switching between things can be good for people. I think for everybody else that it's not specifically helpful for, it sucks. There's a reason only so many people play Cooking Mama to this day, or similar video games, because mini-game games keep you from building skill in a certain aspect. They keep you from being relaxed and just doing the same thing over and over again. They take away repetition, which for a few handful of people can be super helpful, but for everybody else, sucks. Moving on. Breathing exercises. I think everybody needs to learn a couple of them and practice them and use them occasionally. Nothing helps you calm down like recognizing that you're not calm, controlling your breathing, and making sure that your body, your physical body, calms down. If you can do that, you'll counteract the symptoms of a lot of mental disorders like panic attacks, right? Your heartbeat's going crazy, you're panicking, you don't know where to go, you're freaking out. If you calm down, take deep breaths, and recognize what's going on, you can at least alleviate half the symptoms. You won't take away the panic in your head completely, but you will take away the panic in your body, and you'll no longer be sweating and looking around and trying to find a place to hide physically. Does that make sense? You've never done one in your life? You can look them up. There's a lot of simple ones. Square breathing helped you a lot with stage fright. Yeah, I think breathing exercises help people with the physical aspect of mental illnesses. For a lot of people, that can be really hard. So can't recommend it enough for everybody to at least learn one or two, so that whenever they get into a physically demanding or mentally demanding situation that makes them panic, they have something to fall back on. It's an easy thing. You don't have to do a lot of research to figure out a good breathing technique. Your friend and I have this funny saying when we tell each other to take deep breaths. Breathe in, breathe out, kill him, we do not. Yeah, that sounds like Yoda trying to tell you to not be homicidal. All right, next up, let's talk about rhythm games.
We're all manually breathing now.
We're all manually breathing now, that's true. You're welcome, everyone who's watching this video later. I'm so sorry. Moving on, rhythm games. I have Osu here. Doesn't have to be Osu. This could be Dance Dance Revolution. This could be Guitar Hero. This could be the rhythm game on Genshin Impact. Doesn't matter. Is interesting. I think everybody should do a little bit of rhythm stuff, like playing an instrument or singing music or whatever. I think most rhythm games are a scam. How do I believe both of these things are true? Because the thing is some rhythm games are really just a matter of learning timing, which can be helpful, but that's it. All you do is learn timing. And you can learn timing through 1,000 of these other things, right? Fighting games will teach you timing. Strategy games will teach you timing. Pokemon will teach you timing. First-person shooters will teach you timing. Heck, Skyrim or Dark Souls will teach you better timing than a lot of rhythm games. But I think being involved in music and getting your reaction time good is helpful. And I think people should mostly do it in actual singing or actually playing instruments. Why is timing important? Timing is important because for two reasons. One, it leads to a lot of failure. Why is leading to failure important? So that you can fail in a safe environment, so that whenever you fail in the real world, you're more used to it and you don't have to freak out and stress. You just go, okay, I try again. Just like you do in every rhythm game when you mess up. The other reason timing is important is because it gets your brain moving quickly, and the ability to think on your feet and think quickly and being able to follow things with your eyes and hand-eye coordination, all that stuff, is just important for living, right? If you have a kid in your arm and you get hit by a bus, you need to have the time to catch the kid, right? I know that sounds extreme, but timing and moving at the correct moment and getting your eyes to look at the right things at the right time is really helpful for a lot of situations, if that makes sense. So you know to take the shot. If you don't wait for the perfect time, you could miss. Yeah, like, not necessarily just like shooting someone, but like playing basketball with your friends or whatever. Timing is just a helpful thing to know. And psychologically talking about timing, if you understand the right time to do something, you'll be better at having conversations with people and confronting problems, right? Now that isn't the kind of timing you'll learn from a rhythm game. You'll learn the other kind I've been talking about. But I still think it's helpful and most people should get reasonably good at it. But I don't think you need to play a rhythm game to get good at it, not even a little bit. I think you can just play basketball or do something like that. Moving on, let's talk about exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is like avoidance evil cousin. If avoidance is running away from a problem, exposure therapy is throwing yourself at the problem. What is exposure therapy? Let's get into it. I'll set it here for now. I'm going to move it somewhere else. Exposure therapy is the practice of finding an issue, finding a problem, finding something you're scared of, for instance, and then exposing yourself to that thing you have an issue with in a safe environment so that you understand that it's not dangerous, it's not bad, and you'll be fine. And it teaches you to overcome fears, it teaches you to overcome anxieties. A lot of people recommend it for things like phobias or things like social anxiety. So like, if you're scared of spiders, go to a pet shop, handle a spider, you'll be in a safe place, you'll be fine. If you are worried about talking to people, try talking to people in a controlled environment, like your therapist or your mom. And expose yourself to that situation until you're comfortable, if that makes sense. Fear of silence, put you in a silence chamber. Yeah, maybe unethical to do this against someone's will, but I think exposure therapy can be really, really helpful for people. However, if people don't take it well, if people don't let it be a shaping experience that helps change them, they will make it a worse experience. For instance, if you're afraid of spiders and someone throws a spider at you, You will be more afraid of spiders. Similarly, if you're afraid of spiders and your therapist says, let's try exposure therapy, and puts a spider on your hand, and you freak the freak out and huck the spider at him, and you like run into a wall. I'm here? Are we good? Sweet. Let's party. Do you guys know the moment I cut off at? Oh, the running into a wall thing. Right. Just the idea of like, how's it? What was I trying to say? If you do exposure therapy and you have a bad experience, it can make it worse. But yeah, exposure therapy, polarizing. That's where it's going to go. This is the symbol for RuneScape, and we're going to take it to mean MMOs, or online games with a bunch of people. Probably an IP distribution problem. Yeah. Sometimes Wi-Fi goes out. It's not a big deal. Okay, MMOs, chat. I'll be real with you. I don't play a lot of MMOs. I don't know a lot about the topic. I'm going to put it under polarizing because I think for a lot of people it can be good and like help relieve stress. I think for a lot of people it would make it much worse. I think for a lot of people social interaction's nice. For a lot of people it's bothersome. And MMOs also usually have, what's the word? A game environment that is stressful. The way Genshin does with lots of collectible items that you have to gather, right? A lot of grinding in most MMOs. So we're going to put it under polarizing. Simple explanation. There's not much to it. Do I have a static IP or use auto? I don't know. Let's move on with this video. Right, we're still running, yeah? Okay, we're still running. Okay, moving on. AFK, or away from keyboard games that are like auto battlers. I think, personally, these are scams. They've got all of the scammy practices of your average gacha game or your average tedious game where you have to build a lot of resources and stuff. And you don't get a lot out of the actual gameplay because it's an auto battler. There's very little actual gameplay, if that makes sense. AFK Arena is crap. Yeah, so I've been told. I think most auto battlers and most away from keyboard games are just trying to get you addicted to your phone and keep you on it as much as possible. Never understood the appeal of AFK games. I don't like them either. I've never enjoyed any of them. I have played Raid Shadow Legends a bunch, and it's okay, but I don't like it very much. I just play it because I don't even know why I play it the more I think about it, but that's not the point. The point is, it's just something trying to build an addiction the way social media does, but it's worse. Why would you play something you're not meant to play? Yeah, I don't know. That's dumb. Moving on. This is the symbol for Candy Crush, but we're going to take it to mean any low-effort thinking mobile game. See, these are interesting. This is my brain says, oh yeah, recommend this for just about everybody because it's a really good coping mechanism. There's very little stakes. You just play the game, right? And again, it's not specifically Candy Crush. It's just mobile games that take a very little amount of thought, like Bejeweled or the tube water game where you like try to get the colors of the water lined up, if that makes sense. So I think my brain says put it for everybody or for most people because it's just a stress-free, brainless, easy task to do that helps calm people down. However, most of them have the goal of getting you addicted to your phone, and so I'm putting it under polarizing because for people who don't have addictive personalities, they're great. They're super helpful. Just chill things that you just sit there and just zone out and let you relax. I think for anybody who has an addictive personality, they can be pretty bad because they can convince you to spend money or waste your time, if that makes sense. Are you saying there's more than one kind of Candy Crush? What? That's not the point. Candy Crush is not the thing we're talking about. Moving on. Shopping as a coping mechanism. I would put this under scam. Online shopping, biggest scam of all. Yeah, for real. I think there's parts of it that I get. I understand why people like it because it offers them control. It gives them the ability to do what they want, to take over their lives, so to speak. However, it's really just companies trying to get you to buy stuff. And if you spend your money because you're stressed, you could lead yourself into more stress that way, if that makes sense. So I think online shopping or shopping in general as a coping mechanism to help you feel better, scam. Because you can achieve those things that are good about it in other ways, right? If you want control over your environment, play a video game, play a simulator, play Dungeons and Dragons, write in a journal, go exercise. If you want cool products, get into arts and crafts. Buy the stuff you need for the cool products, right? Make a budget and pick out cool things. But I think in general, stress shopping is just a slippery slope. You once bought chicken nuggets and ice cream at midnight because you're having a panic attack? Yeah, and that, it works, but you think it had more to do with the long walk and phone call with your mom? Yeah. I think the thing about getting ice cream and chicken nuggets in the middle of the night is that it was an impulse buy, and if you couldn't afford it at the time, you would have gotten it anyways. And that's the danger of shopping for stress. Question is, who's the bald man in the box? This is the logo for Jackbox Games, which is like a party game for multiple people. We should play Jackbox Games one day on stream. It would be fun.
That would be awesome.
It'd be super fun. Finch, do you want to play Jackbox Games with chat one day?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. Moving on, therapy. I recommend this for everyone with a very special caveat. Not all therapy is the same. I didn't have time to talk about cognitive behavioral therapy and psychoanalysis and, right? But therapy in general, I recommend to everybody. Everybody should find therapy that works for them from a therapist that works for them, or from a psychologist or psychiatrist that can help them. I think therapy can be wildly helpful and has very few downsides. There can be downsides, and they can be drastic at times, but they're uncommon, and the main downside is just wasting time of trying to find the right therapist and not finding them. Once you find the right therapist, it's really helpful, and I think I can recommend this wholeheartedly to everybody. Question again, will we have time for Teo to fight review? Oh, you want me to do a fight breakdown? That'd be a fun thing to do. We'll do that one day. Moving on, Roller Coaster Tycoon, specifically Tycoon games. I think they're good for some things. I think if you want to learn about the economy and get better at resource management, like if you do online shopping as a coping mechanism and you want to stop doing that and you want to learn how to budget, they can be a fun way to gamify that task.
Plus, the original Roller Coaster Tycoon is like $1, so...
Yeah, and a lot of Tycoon games are free or cheap, or there can be mobile games, right? Which is cool, not a part of the criteria for this list.
For people who need to learn spending habits.
That's true, though not a criteria for the part of this list. Moving on, sports video games. I'm going to put this under great for some purposes. Sports video games like Madden or FIFA are literally just like any other game, but with a specific group of people in mind. So, like, I don't think it's recommended for everybody, but I also don't think it's polarizing, because I don't like sports, but I don't dislike sports video games, you know what I mean? A stream of just fight breakdowns sounds fun. I would love that. Moving on, pool, or specifically bar games. So, like, we would count pool or billiards, if you call it that. You would count foosball and ping pong. I would say recommend it for many. It's got all of the appeal of chess, but there's more physical stuff to it. There are a few downsides, like there are with everything, and the reason it's not for everybody is because most of these activities you can't just have at home, right? I don't have a pool table back here, it's too big. I don't have a ping pong table. So it's not great for people who need a way to cope in their house. But it's great for people who don't have that problem and can go to a nearby place to do it, right? You think it's a scam? No, I think most bar games are really helpful. I think they can be a scam. I think once you gamble on them and bet money, that's when it's a scam. Or when if you enter tournaments for it, it's no longer a coping mechanism, but is more of like a whole... It's its own thing at that point. But I think playing bar games with friends and people is just as helpful as playing party games with your friends. You want a little baby pool table now? No, those suck. Little mini pool tables suck. From someone who used to play pool all the time, they just suck. Cleaning as a coping mechanism. This is an interesting one. Because my brain instantly says, oh yeah, everybody should clean when they're stressed. And I think that is pretty much true. because it will improve your environment. It'll help you relieve stress. However, there's a dangerous thing about cleaning, and that is that if cleaning is your main coping mechanism, but your house is clean, what do you do now? Right? If you've already cleaned your house, it's spotless, it's beautiful, you're suddenly out of coping mechanism, which you don't really run out of any of these other things, except for like money for like shopping, I guess.
That's why it's at the bottom.
That's why it's at the bottom. But cleaning, I recommend for many people. When you're stressed, you should try to make your environment more clean. It'll help you feel better. Having said that, if it's your only coping mechanism, it can be dangerous, right? You can just clean it more. Yeah, you just wipe your clean counters. You just go insane. Anyway. One last thing to do on this tier list, and that is to move everything to the front. The most scam thing out of all of this, I think, is gambling. It's just a straight up addiction that's not lying to you about being an addiction. It's the biggest scam. The most polarizing thing on the polarizing list is a good question. All of these are pretty polarizing. We're gonna go with Dark Souls, probably. That's probably the most one. You say mopping the lawn? Wait, what? Moving on. Great for some purposes. The most like specific thing that is only good for certain people. Probably group therapy. I think a lot of people don't even remotely benefit from it. And I think some people do, and I think that kind of summarizes it perfectly. Recommended for many. Something I think pretty much everybody should try or do or try to do. Probably affirmations. I think affirmations are really good. Yeah, I think they're great. Positive self-talk is really important. And then recommended for all, this is the hardest decision so far. It's either journaling or therapy. The thing about therapy is therapy costs money. And so it's hard for everybody to do it, depending on where you live. There are certain places where you can get therapy for free. Journaling is really good. D&D is really good, because D&D is journaling with friends, or therapy with friends, and it's free, right? So these are definitely the top 3 picks. What goes first depends on your circumstances. If you don't have anyone to play D&D with, these are probably better. If you don't have any money or don't live in a place where therapy is easily accessible, these 2 are probably better, right? If you don't know how to read, which, I don't know, maybe you don't.
People who don't know how to read play D&D?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think about it. You know the person we played D&D with on Sunday? Do you think she's ever read any of the rule books?
Yeah.
Do you think she's even looked at her character sheet beyond what I've told her to write down?
No.
Yeah, me neither. I think you just, like, memorize the rules that are told to you, right? When if you make an attack roll a d20, blah, 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 right? Although I guess with journaling, if you had an app that could just take what you said and wrote it down, you could journal still. You would...
Those are a little bit finicky.
Yeah, but they can't read, so what does it matter? You only get half the benefit, though, because you can't read your journal from that point on. But you would still...
Text-to-speech.
That's true, you get text-to-speech done. There we go. No, yeah, journaling is even for people who can't read. There we go. Reading is not one of your strong suits because you're dyslexic. Makes sense. I think journaling would be good for you because it'll help you get better. But yeah, that makes sense. Moving on. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and drop a subscribe or hop on over to Twitch and follow. It's totally free to do so, and it really helps me out. If you don't want to do that, I don't care. You're an adult. Do what you want. Live your life. Or you're not an adult. I still don't care. Live your life. The point is, thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoy the content. I hope you watch more. And for everybody in Twitch chat, thanks for being here too. Alright guys, now that YouTube's gone,